Okay, welcome back to the Men and Love podcast. We are here today to take a little bit of a different approach. We've been speaking a lot to men about their experience in love and love. And here's an opportunity for us to speak and hear from the feminine, their experience of love and partnership. And I have someone who I've been really curious about in witnessing and observing her experience of love, partnership, and the stages that love goes through. What I hear from her is a lot of the messaging that I share with the men that I'm working with, which is self responsibility, which is introspection, which is creating sovereignty within our own experience so that we can contribute, so that we can share, so that we can participate in the experience of love, as opposed to maybe taking or projecting our experience on love. My guest today is Galina. I'd like to welcome you to this podcast, and I'm really excited for you to be here. So thank you very much for stepping in.
Thank you, Markwell. It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you for the opportunity.
Beautiful. One of the things that really stood out to me when I'm listening to what you have been sharing is this idea of self-responsibility. Like that is something that I'm imparting on the men that I'm working with, that as a lens to play with, what does 100% responsibility look like for every outcome, every situation in our life? And one of the things that often comes up there though is that projection from the feminine also is landing on them, as if they're entirely responsible for this partner's feeling of safety, for the feminine's feeling of safety. To hear about you speaking in this way, that you're taking that responsibility for your own emotional experience and the stages how that has changed over the stages of your partnership.
Yeah. Thank you. Just to answer about self-responsibility, it was very difficult to come to. I want to say that I was kicking and screaming when I realized that I'm a grown-up and my feelings and my actually satisfaction of life are fully in my control. That was really, really hard to accept. It went against everything I thought I knew about love and relationships. So
I'm wondering if you can give me some data on how long have you been married? What does your family look like? I'd love to hear about that.
I met my husband when I was 22, so also a child, right? By today's standards. I'm going to be 60 in a month.
Mm.
So it's a long, long time. We got married when I was 24. Everything seemed, kind of fairy tale in the beginning. We were in love, so that kind of cushioned and softened everything else. And I just, I think at that time we were both really, really codependent, but really enjoying because we were both there for each other and giving each other whatever we anticipated each of us needed. And I felt safe and happy for a long time. It was really when we had our children, and especially as the children were growing, we have three daughters, that things just became really, really strange. I know my husband today, looking back, I know he was working hard, obviously huge responsibility to be a provider for the family. I didn't experience it as valuable then. Unfortunately, I really do understand what that means today. But I just expected him, yes, to provide for us, but also to show up at home and be there to read the nighttime story
Mm.
and participate during the bath, with the children, and participate, and be initiating of where we go on vacation next. And basically there was just all this expectation that while he was able to do all that, while we were, when it's just two of us, and then maybe when it was just three of us, when it became five of us, it was increasingly harder. I'm realizing it now, but I didn't know that. I still kind of was stuck in that. First of all, remembering how happy I used to feel with him and thinking that I'm not feeling that anymore. That must be his fault, or something that he's not doing enough of. And just, overall kind of stuck in that sense of entitlement and expectation. And it's only when I started also becoming responsible for providership of our family and et cetera, I understood what it means, to go out there and actually, so that kind of brings me back to self-responsibility. When two adults meet and create anything, whether it's a family or a business or, cohabiting, maybe owning a house, it's two sovereign beings, two adults
Mm.
contributing, in whatever way they can. That's how I see self-responsibility today. And I didn't know that in the beginning. Nobody kind of taught me that. I watched my parents unsuccessfully navigate their marriage. I watched all the other people around me unsuccessfully navigate their relationships. And I just thought, well, if I have the right person, I'll, circumvent these issues, and there won't be problems with the right person. And when I stopped feeling happy, I started thinking that maybe I'm with the wrong person after all. So yeah, and after that, it's I kind of fell into the typical reactions, right? We all expect somebody else to make us happy, and if they're not making us happy, then maybe that's not the right relationship for
Mm.
me, which is so myopic and so primitive. And again, from the height of realizations today, I realize how completely false it is, and how many relationships are destroyed through
Yes.
that unrealistic, line of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, I'm reminded also that I have $3 too, and knowing kind of that chapter of children entering into a partnership where life
Hmm.
gets chaotic, life gets
Hmm.
full, and it really is unreasonable what we're
Hmm.
being asked to carry.
Hmm.
Like we're both kind of playing the same role. Like your husband is out there working and doing the things and being expected
Hmm.
to is
Hmm.
against the have calm nervous system,
Yeah.
not put after
Right.
not
Right.
all these things that unfold in this stage of partnership, and it's such an initiation that will eventually like expose the ways that maybe the things that we were ignoring in the early parts of a
Yeah.
relationship that where it was all love and connection. Now this the pressure of parenting, the portal of this moment starts to bring those things up, and is I think many people have the story that it's broken or this is not the right person.
That's right.
And like you
That's
said, like,
right.
and then I feel so sad often thinking about this and that they leave in this moment. The
Mhm.
partnership breaks because of the ecosystem got charged and it got difficult and we got to expose these things and not hang in there
Mhm.
for what's available after. And
Sure,
yeah,
and I want to say that there are many pressures on relationships, right? Initiation
yeah,
can come in various forms. Yes,
for
children,
sure. Yeah.
always, right? That's a huge additional pressure. But also it could be, financial worries. It could be somebody gets sick, somebody loses a job, somebody gains weight, loses weight, ages, like you name it, right? Life in a long-term relationship, there are so many different changes and evolution that happens automatically. And I think you're right in that anytime there's this additional pressure that's introduced, it exposes all the blind spots, and it exposes all the weak links that were always there in the marriage, right? And that's when it really is testing our capacity to be together, to love each other, to persevere, to understand what commitment is, which
Mm,
I'm finding there's a lot of confusion about commitment because we do it as replace, like it's a trade-off for freedom. So you're either free or you're in a commitment. And I'm finding more and more how much freedom there is in commitment, actually. So yeah, it's basically life will give us initiation into learning to love, no matter what we think,
yeah.
when we're getting into relationships.
Yeah, I'd love to explore that idea of freedom in commitment. One of the things that was coming up for me here was like when whatever it is, whether it's financial or job or family growth, I think what I hear often is that the two parties start to maybe even sense that their freedom is being taken away because there's all of this pressure or that it's
Mhm.
shifting and changing. And it becomes, I'm seeing these conversations that I hear about, like conversations on the couch about,
Mhm.
almost like comparing who has it more difficult, whose life is
Mhm.
being
Mhm.
impacted more, who's carrying the heavier load, as opposed to
Mhm.
acknowledging each other and saying, man, this is a tough moment in our
Yeah.
partnership. And I
Yeah.
see you, and I'm hoping you can see me in carrying this. I'm wondering about that, what you said there of like the freedom that's available inside of commitment. Share more about
Yeah. I mean, and I've explored it at length in my own relationship. The first thing that comes, like kind of the first layer of that is I am in this relationship because of choice, right? To
that.
come to that, I'm washing these dishes not because my teenage children are so horrible and they're lazy and they're all this stuff, but because I love a clean kitchen. And so, yeah, I just made the dinner. Yeah, I fed my children because I want them to eat well, because I believe in it, because it's for me, it's for my own pleasure, it's for my own happiness, it's for my own well being. Good relationships with my husband, with my children is for me, first of all, right? Eating well is for me, first of all. Clean kitchen is for me, first of all, right? So when we reframe the obligations and duties and responsibilities that we take on in relationships, in family structure, in life, you can reframe anything into this. I'm choosing this. because I
Mm.
believe in it, because it's part of my values, because this is who I want to show up as into my relationship. Many of us don't have an opportunity to make these choices because we're kind of stuck in the often subconscious patterns. First of all, we've witnessed our parents fight all of our life, throughout our
Yeah.
childhood. And unconsciously, often we repeat these, like, if I saw my mom putting down my father, for as long as I can remember, I'm going to be this nagging, judgy wife to my husband. And, it's so quick, it's so immediate, it's so automatic that often we don't even see what we're doing. Like when I became aware of how I was showing up, sometimes literally I'd be like with both hands,
It's
close to my
happening.
mouth because it's
Yeah,
like,
it's happening
what
right now.
the hell is coming out of my mouth? It's not even me. I
Mm.
promised myself I will never be my mom. So like, what are these words? I don't even believe in it. So that's when the shift can happen. The savior moment is when we become aware of what we're actually saying and what we're actually doing. And then not only believe that, but start questioning it. Is this really me? Do I really think that? Is that really what's important to me?
Mm.
Is this who I want to be in this relationship? Do I want to be this naggy, judgy, intolerant, and what if he were like that to me, et cetera, et cetera. Like for me, in my case, I had an incredibly sweet husband most of the time, right? Until he would get, like all of us, to a point where he could no longer control it. So often I would actually question, like, if he were as judgy as I was, and the environment in which I was raised, also, I should, mention that. If he were as judgmental as my father was, I wouldn't be able to. Like, I would be so heartbroken and sick all the
Mm.
time. The fact that he was sweet and tolerant and kind really helped me kind of look at myself and the role I was playing in our relationship.
Beautiful. Yeah, what I'm hearing is that freedom in commitment is the awareness of choice and what we're
Yes.
choosing and why we're choosing something.
Yeah.
And this was a big shift for me was when the weight felt so hard inside of life. Like I have to go do this, I have to do that, which even that language was subconscious.
Mhm.
I didn't really have
Mhm.
awareness of
Mhm.
why I was saying have to, but
Mm.
I was telling a story that like I don't want
Mhm.
this, but I'm
Mhm.
doing that, but I have to go do this.
Right.
And so shifting that into I get this opportunity to clean up after my kids. And I'm trying to keep that in my mind now because,
Mhm.
my kids are two 12-year-olds and a 10-year-old, and soon they
Mhm.
won't want to play at home anymore,
Yeah,
be out
yeah,
in the world. So I get an opportunity to still have them in my
that's
space, and
right.
I get to pick up the Lego again. But yeah,
Yes,
but it does change my experience of my commitment, of my devotion to my family, that I'm choosing this in the moment, in particular in the tough times, right? Like it isn't a
yeah,
weight that I'm carrying because I have to or I'm obligated to. This is the choice. I choose to
yeah,
have a healthy family. I choose to
yeah.
have connection with my wife, to have these hard conversations.
That's
Um,
right. I
yeah,
want to add a nuance here, though,
please.
because lately I've been writing a lot about anger and how it's helped me feeling my anger, how it helped me come to my love, actually. So always reframing into positivity is not really a way out either, because I feel that all of our emotions have place to be. And I think that sometimes life is so tough, and sometimes life is really pushing us to our limits. And in those moments, I think it's important to be able to, even if it's just to our journal or to a therapist or a trusty friend who won't repeat what we say, to say, I hate this. I didn't sign up for this. Do you know what I mean? Because these emotions, let's be realistic, they do come up, right? Like, I know I was the one who was like, I didn't sign up for this. I really didn't know that life would be that difficult. Like, I didn't know how much pressure, because so much of, like, when we think of like finding the one, or the wedding day, and just like the sunset or sunrise with the kiss, in the foreground, none of it is realistic. Yes, there are these amazing moments. Yes, they do exist. It's so powerful when they happen, but life is all of it, right? And I think it's super, super important. A lot of people are afraid of their anger. A lot of people judge their anger and then suppress it, and again, don't know how to be with it. More and more, I learn for myself and teach others, how can we learn to be with our feelings even when they're difficult?
Yeah.
Because it's when we can be with these difficult feelings, with that feeling of hatred, for example, or that feeling like, Um, I mean, I hate you, I hate you. And to understand that, because when I hear I hate you, I understand that's not the truth. But
Mm,
if I don't allow that word to come out, then it's compiling in me in resentment and planning to leave when the children grow, and it's kind of like taking a portion of me away from being present fully for this relationship.
yes.
So that's why I'm like, these crazy feelings, these difficult feelings, these important feelings, they will come up. Let's be realistic,
Mm,
right? There will be moments when I adore this person, and there will be moments when I can stand him. Of over 35 years of marriage, I literally felt it all many times. And I'm coming to the realization that it's when I access my anger, whether it's toward my husband or toward my mother, for example, it's when I access my anger and I allowed myself to swim in it and to be in it and to express it, hopefully in constructive ways, right? Not violent. Obviously, we don't want to do harm to anyone. But when I was able to be with it and learn how to get to the bottom of it, I was able to act like there was pure love underneath that.
mm.
So again, like, not to be afraid of any feelings.
Yeah, absolutely. Like to bypass just immediately to put a positive spin on I have to I get to. There is a
Yeah.
real story that rests underneath that. And the piece about like being with that anger, being with what's actually true is like acknowledging our own humanity. And
Hmm.
when we're able to be inside of like these expressions that come out, like I hate you, I hate this. This is not fair. How did
Hmm.
this happen? I didn't choose this. I think that what it also does is that as we witness that in ourselves and accept that this can come through while not actually being our true part of our story,
Hmm.
does make space to witness the other who may have some expressions that are
Hmm.
coming out. I mean, just my wife and I had a little thing recently in this past month where she got a chance to kind of just be like, "And you're annoying, and your ideas are stupid," and it was a fun moment because it was intense, right? And
Hmm.
then for
Hmm.
both of us, as she said that, like it was quite an intense moment of like contrast and
Hmm.
exploration of what the heck is actually going on right now. When that came out, we can almost both acknowledge at the same time that it was needed to be said, and I
Hmm.
completely understand why she would say that, and also we could see that that wasn't true, and in that way, I can, like, recognize her humanity, that she has these
Mm,
feelings that are unfolding.
mhm,
There's
mm,
this anger towards me that is related to how I'm existing in this world, but it also has a foundation so much more from parts of her life, from stories that she carries. And another version of that could be that just being an addition to a blow up fight, right? Where we can't witness each other. There isn't any space to actually feel and express what is moving through us. We had talked a bit about like the stages of partnership, and like what's coming through in this piece is like the awareness that it isn't just our partner's responsibility to make us happy, that there are things that we maybe at the beginning of partnership place upon them that are almost like contracts that don't allow us to be free, allow us to recognize that we are choosing this even in the tough moments. I'm wondering for you, yeah, what because you had mentioned a little bit, what is that experience of understanding that within your partnership that it's not entirely up to your husband to
It's
take
not
full
entirely.
ownership of your
Yeah.
happiness? Yeah.
I want to say that even the idea that somebody other than me can be responsible for my happiness is nonsensical.
Yes.
I think the fact going into relationship in the hope that that'll make you happier than you've been, it's setting you up for trouble and huge disappointment because, as I study somatics, as I studied the processes that create feelings, first of all, a lot of our feelings stem from our beliefs, right? So, for example, if I believe that we have to do everything together, we have to agree on everything, and we have to, you have to love what I love and I have to love what you love. That already is going to create so much suffering, right? So if I believe that you should agree with me and you should want to do what I want to do, if you ever tell me, you know what, I really don't like basket weaving or dancing or I don't want to do that anymore. I'd rather do golf or something. If I believe that you should want to do what I want to do, then I will be very, very angry and disappointed and probably think what's wrong with our love. Whereas if I believe that, well, everybody has the right to pursue their passions, and some of the things we will love to do together, and that's wonderful, and some of the things we'll love to do apart, and that's also wonderful. It's healthy. Then it'll create a different set of feelings in my body, right? So that's why, just the premise of somebody can be responsible for my happiness is completely unrealistic. It just makes no sense because my feelings are generated from my beliefs and my interpretation of every situation. It's
Right.
not because you give me happiness on a silver platter or that you give me love on a silver platter, because how many times have we been in a relation? I'll speak for myself. I had a situation, for example, where I really, really, really needed to hear "I love you" from this one person. And when he finally wrote it to me in a letter, I couldn't connect to it
Right.
because there weren't all these other promises about the future and stuff like that in that letter. So do you know what I mean? I think that self-awareness and self-understanding is so needed. And so in a way, like the complexity of the example that I just shared is that that man actually gave me, in quotes, what I wanted, but he didn't make me happy by doing what I wanted, because what I wanted wasn't that "I love you." What I wanted was some kind of promise for the future, or maybe some kind of other security or something, whatever it had to be to actually hit that lever within me that would connect to all the situations of like what makes me feel safe, what doesn't make me feel safe, what is it, again, about my beliefs that would then produce the necessary feelings. And that's completely out of somebody's control,
Of
right?
course. Entering into partnership, I think sometimes there is like the idea of this fantasy that this person is going to make me feel happy and
Yeah.
complete my life and everything is beautiful in the early moments. Over time, the data starts to stack up, and the moments when they couldn't be the everything for the other, there can be this projection onto them as they're letting us down in some way.
Yeah.
The shift for me is the understanding that this is actually touching something, like exactly how you're sharing. You were looking for him to say, "I love you," and when it
Mhm.
finally it wasn't actually what was nourishing to you, there was something else. There was something else there
Yeah.
that you were looking
Yeah.
for. How did that shift? Where is there a moment or like a chapter inside of your partnership where it shifted from looking at the other, being like, "You're not doing this for me. I'm upset," to
Mhm.
again, coming back to that self-responsibility piece, like seeing that this is actually illuminating something for you to look at. Is there a
Ways.
moment when that was like became necessary or yeah,
I started realizing again, to me, awareness is the first very important step. In fact, that's the beginning of everything. That's what changed. Because so many of us operate from subconscious urges and from our inner child, right? Like the younger part of us that was wounded during the bonding time with our own caregivers.
yes,
And not enough of us are aware enough of the difference. Here's how my inner child is showing up to this relationship, and here is how I can show up to this relationship as an adult, sovereign, self-responsible. So I started when I became an observer, when I became, in awareness of my own antics, I started noticing little things, like, for example, after a fight with my husband, I would wake up in the morning and there was this like wave of love. And I wanted to, for example, turn to him and just tell him I love you. And I would literally like block myself from doing it because there was
mm,
another part of me that was like, no, he's going to be the first to say, I'm sorry. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah,
I started realizing like, what the hell is going on in there? Like who are all these voices? And I really started paying attention because it was shocking to me that I actually did have access to my love. Like there was that impulse to express love, and that there was another part of me that actually blocked it. Like, how often does that happen in our regular life? Like what else blocks my love? And so, just again, it took me a good 13, 15 years of this kind of investigation to come to where I am today. But I do believe, and this is what I teach everyone, self-awareness, that kind of capacity to be the observer of our own instincts and nudges and behavior and patterns and habits is what can help you then be in choice once again, rather than blindly following habitual patterns of behavior and thought.
I know this is a podcast called Men and Love, and I know that a lot of women are actually listening to this as well.
Mhm.
And so I'm wondering if there's a woman out there who's like, yes, but he is, and they have a story that they're in right
Mhm.
now,
Yeah.
pointing a finger. What might be, of course, we're hearing awareness, which is a clear step, but not a simple and easy step.
Sure.
what might be something for them, a question or a prompt for them that would help them explore what might be underneath this projection or pointing that they might be experiencing?
Yes, sure. I mean, it's again, anything that we feel like, for example, when I feel frustration or anger, say toward my husband,
Yes.
anytime I start focusing on all that he's doing wrong, I'm self-abandoning, right?
Mm,
So because the feeling is mine, the anger is mine. My anger is knocking on the door. Hear me, hear me, hear me. And anger usually stands for either a broken expectation or a broken boundary or some need that's not being met.
yes.
And it requires my attention. Okay, what's going on, anger? What are you talking about? What's the need that's not being met? What's the boundary that's not respected, right? But usually we have a tendency to go and like we call our friends or take out our
Yeah.
journal or like he's so idiot, he's such an idiot, he's so annoying, he did that, and we spin and we spin and we spin a story that's probably has been there for many generations, right? Because again
Mm,
we repeat unfortunately the the roles that we've witnessed in our households where we were growing up. And it's when we are like, and that took me a very long time. It's a muscle that was very difficult to retrain because the mind just goes there automatically. And in that moment when I started like, wait a minute, I'm doing that again, it was still so hard to bring my attention back to myself because it was delicious to
mm,
be in that he's so and so and he's that, and because you're actually expressing your energy of anger like on that vehicle of your partner, and it kind of makes you feel better, right?
yeah.
Sometimes it can expand your anger, but sometimes it's like, whew, now I'm done, now I can go on with my day. So taking your attention actually back to you and going within something that we've spent our life avoiding is really, really hard, at least in the beginning. I
For
mean,
sure.
always hard in the beginning. Even it's hard always.
Yeah, I was
But
gonna
the
say
more,
it feels
right?
like it's a thing that's hard at all times when that
It
anger is growing.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah. And you want to spill it or vomit it on them to actually like contain your energy and to stay with your own discomfort and to be that compassionate space for yourself without judging, without shaming, neither him nor yourself.
mm,
And actually like going, okay, what is like, as again, as a somatic practitioner, I would be like, okay, where do you feel it in your body?
yeah,
And we would go and explore how old that is and
yeah.
all that stuff,
What's
you
the
know?
first time you felt this way?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
or even like that. What I love about somatic work is getting the story right is almost of secondary importance. The
Mm,
most important thing is actually get to the feeling, because when you're working with the feeling and with the sensation directly, you
mhm.
you pierce through all the stories because
Yes.
stories sidetrack us and they keep us kind of on the surface. The more you go into the working with the sensation in your body that contains so much wisdom and so much information, usually you pierce through all the layers of story and you go right into, and often it what it produces is impossible to predict, and it's usually like
Yeah.
mind-blowing.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like that's the when the anger is coming out or we go to our friends or when people will start complaining or maybe now even on Instagram, like the 4 red
Right.
flags,
Yep,
in a
yep, yep.
partnership.
Yeah,
We're just repeating and anchoring and adding another layer on the story of separation, on
yeah.
the story of like it's the other and it's
Right.
and not
It's
taking
you
that awareness.
versus me, right?
Yes,
It's like we get
exactly.
stuck in you versus me rather than a we. And
Yes.
I want to say another thing to kind of to help the female listeners, if there are any. It's I started noticing that next to all the things that my husband didn't do enough of, or your partner, your boyfriend, there are so many things that he is doing right. And
Mm.
that literally saved my marriage. Like the
Hmm.
capacity to, again, let that story go and kind of question it, and also to be like fair, to learn to be fair and to notice all the things that are actually already being done that are wonderful is mind-blowing. Because also when you're connecting to things that you do appreciate about your partner, immediately it puts you in a different nervous system state, right? So here I was like angry and he didn't do it. So I'm like agitated, right? If
Yep.
I'm agitated, I'm becoming overwhelmed, right, by my own activation, which means I no longer have access to my prefrontal cortex, which
Yeah.
keeps me in the we,
Yeah.
right? All the blood goes into amygdala. So I'm in survival mode, and you're no longer we. You're now my enemy. Like you're my threat to survival, right? And it happens in split second and completely beyond our awareness. When we start training ourselves to focus on all the things that you do already do and all the sweetness that I do already feel from you, I'm, unbeknownst to me, regulating my system, right? I'm relaxed when I'm focusing on like all the good things and everything. I'm regulating my system. I'm relaxing my body because I'm in gratitude, right? I'm getting access to my prefrontal cortex. I do love him. And that, do you know what I mean? So it's like,
Absolutely.
it's
Yeah.
a beautiful practice, not only like mentally, but it's like you're also working with your nervous system at the same time. And that is the key to everything.
Absolutely. I mean, from just even hearing how you're expressing that, I know for myself and I know for a lot of guys that I'm speaking to, like that a piece
Mhm.
of acknowledgement is so
Mm,
powerful.
mm.
We
Yeah,
don't need you to know, everything we did today, but if you just give us a little nod and say, "Yeah, I see you.
yeah,
We're
yeah.
here."
I saw that. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, like that even there, I can
Yeah,
feel it in my own body,
yeah.
and so the thing that I hear a lot from guys is that, they'll clean up the whole house because they want to have this impact, but they forgot the one sweater, and their partner comes home, and
And
that
that's
is
all their fault.
right?
Yeah,
And so there's this thing that's unfolding, which the sweater
yeah,
is a representation of something else maybe that she's
yeah,
feeling, right?
yeah,
And he's done all this work to prepare for her return, and they get lost right there. All of a sudden, again,
yeah,
it's not the we, it's the we're
yeah,
against each other.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah,
when I think about what I'm trying to share with some of these guys is that we need to get the issue from in between us, because when it's in between us, we can't see each other. I can't
mhm,
see the person clearly, and they can't see me. So the
mm,
understanding piece is lost. Somehow moving that from being in between, where we have a
mm,
story of whose life is
mm,
harder, who had,
mm,
whatever
mm,
it is, and getting it out in front of us so we can come into connection with each other
mm.
first, see each other more clearly, and then maybe talk about like what's happening about this sweater and
Yeah,
find.
I think also like I keep a lot of reminders about like celebrating humanness,
Mm,
celebrating imperfections, celebrating making mistakes as humans and learning from that, you know? And yeah, our partners, they're never going to do it because no, first of all, nobody lives in our head, right? Even if we give clear instructions,
right.
we think we've told it all, we've said it all, but nobody's living in our head. And they may follow our instructions to the T, but like you said, there is this one thing that we forgot to specify that is just, that's going to blow up. So again, that understanding of like, what do we choose to again, choice, what do I choose to focus on? Do I choose to focus on the things that are not being done, or do I choose to focus on things that are being done? And then again, who benefits from my choices? Where do I put my focus? Where do I put my attention? Me, first of all, right?
Mm,
If I focus on my husband loves me and he tries so hard, like I'm the first to benefit from that belief that affects my feelings. I'm the
mm.
one. It's not for him or them or anyone else. It's not getting anyone off the hook. It's me in self-care. I
Wow. Yeah,
see all right. I see what my partner is doing for me. That makes me feel loved. I'm a loving partner.
that feels really powerful because I know that in many dynamics, what ends up happening is the masculine at times starts turning into like this performance monkey who is just trying to do the thing that's going to make
Mhm,
her happy, and because there's maybe something that's not clicking on that side of the of
mhm,
feminine, of acknowledging maybe some like responsibility in the feelings or the exploration of what's coming up for them, the
mhm,
dynamic unfolds where she's in some ways perpetually unhappy, and then the masculine turns into trying to do everything possible to fix, repair, save, forgive
mhm.
thing, and I invite them into becoming more connected back into themselves and not having that be so invested on top of how she's feeling, so she can be with her feelings of displeasure. Like leave, like even leave the sweater out so we can have the opportunity to talk
Mhm.
about what might be coming up, as opposed to shifting into like a performance of fixing and getting better and meeting all of her needs that she's
Yeah,
placed upon
yeah,
you.
yeah. I kind of want to, a conversation, something that's jumping at me that I would love to name is
Yeah,
that you're calling a woman, the one in the woman role, a feminine, and the man masculine. And I want to say that I believe and that masculine and feminine energies exist in all of us. And I
absolutely.
think it's super, super important to actually understand that because, again, in long term relationships, I found my husband sometimes needed to be in his feminine in quotes and be emotional and express his emotion, whereas I had to step up and be in my masculine, in relationship with him.
Absolutely.
Because in life, we're actually moving through these what we've labeled as masculine or feminine expressions all the time. Like, for example, when I teach a class, I'm in my masculine. I give and I penetrate, and I hold structure. And then I go home and my husband, is, I don't know, maybe made a meal for me and I receive it from him and I am in my feminine. Do
Mm,
you know what I mean? I'm still that
absolutely.
same person. So I think that it's kind of important to remind men or women for that matter that we are all everything. And yes, there are certain differences in expression. There are different hormones, obviously, there are different functions. All that is absolutely true. But in terms of, again, long term relating, I feel like life will always push us and give us opportunities to step into roles that we are not used to maybe
Mm,
playing or that we actively resist playing, but yet we'll have to learn how to be in our wholeness because life will require that. So
yeah,
again, like that whole thing, providing or nurturing or taking care of children or being the breadwinner, like I think in today's world, we all are often doing all of it.
I appreciate you naming that. And I'm noticing, and I know this for my own relationship that like I've been married 13 years now, and we would not be still here today if there wasn't space for a whole season. Like not even just like not an afternoon,
Mm,
not a
mm,
few weeks or a month, but a number of months where, like you said, jobs shift,
mhm,
careers change, they come and they go, and where yeah, there was from my masculine energy, the story that I was telling myself was like I've collapsed, I'm falling apart. And really what it
mhm.
was a an opportunity to drop into my feminine, to feel these moments,
That's
and if
right.
it wasn't for the capacity and the acceptance of my wife to step into a more structure of life, to hold the family in a way that I just wasn't able to do in that time,
Mhm,
yeah, we wouldn't be here, we wouldn't still be here
mhm.
today.
Yeah.
And in saying that, she held that for a while, and it was clear that the desire was to bring it back, like to bring balance
Mhm.
back to the
Yeah.
universe in some way. And of course, these things unfold. Life unfolds within our days, our weeks. There are times where I would like to drop into being able to
Mhm.
feel fully in front of my wife and not have to hold
Mm.
the things that I
Mm.
hold. Yeah,
Because
but like,
also, we get like people gets again, like life is years together. Like people get sick, right? There is like grieving in families. There is all kinds of like all of each of us needs to have space to be human, no matter
mm,
what gender we are, expressing this in this lifetime.
yeah, beautiful. One of the things, maybe from there, I'm curious. One thing that I wanted to ask you: 35 years married. Yeah. There's a sentence that I love. I think I got it from, like, an old guy who had been married a long time. Whenever I hear that, I'm always like,
Mhm.
"So what's the secret?" Give me some gems right now.
Mhm. Mhm.
One of the things that was shared to me is we've never wanted a divorce at the same time.
Interesting. Yeah.
Never wanted a
Sure.
divorce at the same time. And so I'm wondering to hear from you, like, what has commitment, devotion to be
Mm.
together for this amount of time?
Mm.
My understanding is that you 2 have gone through things together, and it has gotten scary, and maybe at times you felt alone or confused, or like the
Mm.
story of like,
Mhm.
he's not the right guy, and I'm not the
Yeah.
right one. My life should
Yeah.
look a lot or feel a lot different. Like in my field are guys that, and maybe even at one point sat down at a kitchen table with their wife and divorce papers, and for whatever reason, they don't sign them.
Mhm.
But what is available for people who hang
Mhm.
in there, who honor that commitment, connect
Mhm.
back to devotion? What's on the other side of that, even from the
Yeah.
scariest moments?
Yeah. Yeah. For me, people who once loved each other, like for me, love and hate are but one step away. I didn't coin that phrase, right? I don't even remember where
Sure.
I read it first, but because I see we only can hate so powerfully because we love so much. It
Mm,
only hurts so much because we love so hard, do you
mm,
see? So for me, coming to, this place of, we're out. For me, unless it's actually abusive situation, which obviously needs to be resolved the only way by separating and leaving. For me, everything else is learning to distinguish between your inner child and the pain of your inner child, and like what would the adult me choose. And a lot of the pain that I, again, speaking for myself, a lot of the pain, like there were moments when seriously looked at each other with such, like, for me to see my husband that I used to adore, who I always felt adored me, to see that hatred, to see that anger in his eyes was the most earth-shattering thing. Like, it really is. It touches you at your core. Like, that person who used to love me doesn't love me. It really, like, I'm feeling it in my body now. Like, it just, like, it's like a vice that's just like crushing you, you know? And I think that if you like, it's when I started really studying the nervous system and understanding that in those moments when we say those hurtful words, we're not relating to each other.
Hmm.
And that's a very hard thing to do because the person is right there. He's looking at you and he's calling you that word, you know? It's like he's talking about me and I'm taking it personally. When I learned not to take it personally, that changed everything. When I understood that in moments of trigger, and there is, again, through the power of observation, I understood there is this one specific trigger that my husband always reacts to. And I started realizing it has nothing to do with me. In that moment, he's fighting some demon from the past, before we even met. And
Mm.
that started. And then I even, like, when I started realizing all this, I even was able, like, today I can talk to him about it. And I can even say, like, when you are in that mode, you're not you're not who I married,
Mm.
and because I've learned to talk about it way after the conflict when he has calmed down and he can take me in and hear me, we have actually, productive and constructive conversation. Because I mentioned this in previous interviews, I used to be very much in fight. And when I
Mm.
was in fight, like, I need to resolve this now, give me the satisfaction now. No, don't go anywhere. Like, hey, hear me out. And he was like, "Get me
Yeah,
out of
push
here,
back. Yeah.
or I'm out," or he leaves and slams the door. That was so hurtful because it was like he doesn't love me enough. He doesn't love me enough to, and I couldn't be with my own feelings and the intensity of my activated nervous system. So I needed him to bring the relief, and he
Right.
wasn't in capacity to do that. So now that I'm understanding all these mechanisms, I can give him his space because I understand his nervous system regulates through space and distance and being on his own. My nervous system used to need the other body. I would go toward the other body for regulation. Now that I understand this and I have ways to self-regulate, I I can give him his space and I wait for him to calm down. And then, like, the bid for reconnection happens automatically. We turn toward each other again,
Right.
just organically.
Yeah, I mean, what I'm hearing is speaking to a pretty high level awareness and activation of making space for repair and not allowing something to just consume both
Yeah.
people consumed inside a trigger, having it kind of go off the hinges, and then repair feels like it's almost impossible to get
Impossible. Yeah.
comfortable because we leave this inferno, and the last thing we want to do is
Yeah.
step back into that.
Yeah.
To
And
that.
sometimes it's true, some words are said in those moments that are difficult to forgive, right? Like,
Yep.
they stay with you. So again, for me, I studied triggers a lot, and that understanding that in the moment of trigger, you're not in the present moment. You're not even relating to the person in front of you. You're reenacting the past emotionally, but you don't have the cognitive piece. So you think this is happening with this particular person.
Yeah. I mean, and to go onto that, to piggyback that, my perception is that we picked the perfect people to activate that.
Oh,
There's a
yeah. All
piece
the
of why
buttons.
we were attracted to them because we knew that this would give us
That's right.
these moments to meet these feelings again. Just to stay a little bit on that idea of like being at the edge, is there something like sort of short and sweet that you could share in some way of like an invitation for someone to stay at the table of relating when parts of their mind or the projections they have, the stories they're telling is that it's over. I have to leave. I can't be with this
Mhm.
anymore. What might, if someone came to you with that sentiment, what
Mm.
might be your
I
or
wouldn't argue. I would confirm a chapter is over. It's very
mm,
possible. Do you know what I mean? Again, in the long-term relationship, there are so many chapters that are closing and opening, and new ones are opening. And so, I feel like a part of me that 10 years ago would say, I'm out of here, like I'm done. She was done. That
Mm,
part of me was done. And a new one emerged, and she had different needs, and she had different wisdom, and she, et cetera, et cetera. So for me, when we feel like, I'm not going to tell you, no, 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 you're not done. You still have work. Like, no, you feel done about this particular thing. Yes. What are you done with?
that's a great
What are
question.
you, right? What are you done with? What is the thing that can't happen again? And again, but you go in, right? It's not about him or her. It's about you. What are you done with?
Wow.
And
Yeah.
what, right? And what's the wisdom that's coming from there? What's the boundary that needs to be spoken, maybe restated, maybe reframed, maybe repeated?
Yeah. I know a couple actually that they were married ceremonially, and then they
Mhm.
in their growth and in their expansion into greater connection, they realized it was time to have let that first marriage go. Like, even
Mhm.
had a ceremony of, like,
Mhm.
separation, where they could
Mhm.
have another ceremony of reconnection and the recreation of something new together. Same people, new
Mhm.
chapter,
Totally.
different
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
Absolutely. I think that's actually a very important piece that, again, from the perspective of long-term relationships, or even sh- relatively short, let's say 6 months, right? 6 months ago when you met, you were different people than you are now, 6 months later, a year later, 5 years later, right? We are different people because even if we didn't interact with the world inside of, outside and just with each other, we've already impacted in each other enough that we've become someone else,
Yeah.
right?
Change,
So
growing and changing
so
always.
I think that understanding that we are, first of all, that we are evolving and changing. And whenever some, again, disgruntled, marriage member comes to me and says, they'll never change, I always say, we don't know that. Anyone can change if they're inspired to. Nobody will change by force because then you just will get someone compliant and you'll be sick of them anyway, right? So you want to inspire people toward change, not to force them to change or to demand or to feel entitled to their change. No, right? So how do we inspire change in our partner? By, thanking them for the good that we do see, by kindly, softly, in a loving way, learn to express what we would like to see differently, but in a way that they will want to do that for us rather than so hurt, so shamed, so judged that they'll just dig in their heels and never do that again.
Yeah, my feelings about inspiring change is to be the party, to,
Mhm.
like, embody these new ways of being, to show up and be a disruptor inside of the
Yeah.
pattern of confrontation, the pattern of trigger, and show that, like, there's a whole doorway here, there's an
Yeah.
exit that we can both walk through together. Like, I'm standing at the doorway here, and maybe
Yeah.
you'd like
Yeah.
to join me over here without that judgment or shame or expectation in any way. Just
Which
be
is
the
a
see.
lot to ask, right? Like,
Yeah,
let's
yeah.
say it's big shoes that we have to fill because it requires enormous amount of self-compassion, self-awareness, self-responsibility. But and also I want to say, let's not romanticize change either because change is difficult, because I feel like a lot of couples get kind of into this dance with very specific rails. We know how they'll respond, and then one of them starts changing, like maybe there was
Oh,
a
it
death of a parent, maybe there was an illness, maybe somebody lost a job, maybe somebody met someone else, like there are these changes that are happening in their behavior. And even if it's ultimately for the better, because it's growth, because it's going to, demand all of us to expand, that moment of change is painful and difficult because we are counting on that predictability in our safe relationships. And when it can no longer predict the behavior of the other, it becomes, it creates it
it's
creates
disrupting,
fear,
yeah, yeah,
it
fear and
creates
confusion,
threat, and even rejection.
yeah.
So yeah, so yeah, you're in for a big ride of all kinds of experiences.
We yeah, we have our relationship has been unfolding in so many ways, so many chapters over the 13 years, and yeah, the expectation that things won't change no matter what is really unrealistic. I think I saw in a
Correct.
bathroom stall one time years ago, the only thing guaranteed is change, and I remember sitting there just looking at it being like, "But I like how things are."
Yeah,
Sure enough, life
sure.
unfolded and things started to
Yeah,
change.
yeah.
what I'm hearing in so many parts of this is it's like staying in connection through the chaos, through the shifts, through the changes, staying open to ourselves with aware
Mhm.
what is here for me, and also having compassion for the person in front of us as they are going through their whole process. Well, maybe not,
Mm.
they're not interacting with us anymore. They're in a moment of parts of their childhood, parts of their life that have unfolded before. Yeah, it's been a real pleasure to speak to you about this and explore parts of love that's and to give some of these listeners like a different lens than just a bunch of men talking about love. So I really appreciate everything you've come to share with here. I'm wondering if you would tell us just a little bit the work that you do and how to get in contact with you, and I'll make sure that that's available for anyone that's listening.
Thank you. Yes, so people can find me on Instagram, Galina Singer. They can sign up for my newsletters. I write weekly letters, about my own findings in my own relationship and how I translate it to kind of humanity at large. People can follow me on Substack, Learning to Love with Galina Singer. But all of that is if you sign up for my newsletter, basically you get access to all that information, or even on Instagram through my bio, you also get access to all that. And I post nearly daily contact for years now. So that's also easy way to get access to my philosophy. My biggest thing now is really learning to love the humanity in each of us. I feel like that's what saved my long relationship, is that kind of rehabilitation of being human, and the fact that we're messy, and the fact that we will make mistakes, and the fact that we will hurt each other. But that's not what we want. That ultimately all of us seek love and want to be in love and want to experience love. And then the kind of tangent on that is love is not something we can earn or get from another. Love is a state of being that comes through self-awareness and choice. And a lot of that we can access through somatic work, which I really, really believe. So I really I navigate relationships through the lens of somatics and nervous system. And I feel that even what you said before, something about like that connection, I feel like it's staying in connection with ourselves, first of all. That's the beginning of everything. It's
Yeah.
foundational. So a lot of my work is helping people come back home to themselves again, in that self-awareness, in that self-responsibility. I help them learn how to reparent their own inner children. I help them, clean the lens with which they interpret events in their life and in their relationships. And yeah, and then kind of, to reintegrate their relationships, but through this like self-awareness and compassion to ourselves, first of all.
So good. Yeah, staying in connection to ourselves. That is the foundation of everything. This is a whole other can of worms that we won't have we'll
Mhm.
go into, but this is why I train in jujitsu and boxing and
Mhm.
MMA, is because it's such a powerful tool to just while there's all of this stuff going on around
Mhm.
me,
Mhm.
someone
Mhm.
moving into my space. How can I stay in connection to myself? Because that's when I'm going to be performing the best, when I'm like aware of the emotions that are arising, fear, anger, frustration, whatever it is. Staying in connection to myself allows me to do the things that I've been practicing or having a coach help me prepare
Mhm.
for. So that's a beautiful sentiment to close off with. Thank you so much
Great.
for this conversation. And I'm getting your newsletter, so I've been reading a
Uh,
little bit of it.
oh,
So it's
okay, good,
really
good.
wonderful. So
Okay,
yeah, I would recommend
wonderful.
anyone to
Great.
sign up, and that information will all be in the show notes here. So thank you so much. I really
Thank
appreciate you
you.
being here, and look
Such a
forward
pleasure.
to talking more.